One of my favorite questions to ask new students, I'm talking like they just walked in the door, they just sat down, they haven't heard me speak pretty much at all yet, is what is an organ? And the reason I like to ask this is because we've all heard of organs, right? Like right now, if I ask you this question, just say like, can you point to an organ in your body or describe an organ or name an organ? You know, people are pretty good with this. Right? You could probably be like, oh yeah, I got lungs, got a heart, got a stomach, although you might point down here, but that's a different conversation for a different day. My point here is, when I started asking that question, I'm not really asking you to point to it, right? What I'm asking you is what makes it an organ? Like, what is an organ? Right? If I keep on going with this, like, what is an organism? Like, how is an organism different than an organ? What is a tissue? I guarantee you've heard someone say soft tissue before, but like, what is a tissue? Like, what are these things? And the reason I like to ask this question is because this is setting us up to understand how biology organizes basically just complexity into useful domains. Right? So basically what we're going to see in today's video is a progression from chemistry to complex biology. And it's not that many steps. It's what we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6 steps. That's not bad. We can handle 6 steps. But I think having just this framework in your head is going to be extraordinarily useful as you're progressing through whatever class, whether that's anatomy, whether that's physiology, whether it's anatomy and physiology. I think just understanding kind of how the body is organized is going to be very useful. And to do this, we're going to be using one of Ken Hub's brand new study units in physiology. This is, so we just barely launched our physiology section. This is something we've been working at really hard behind the scenes. We're extraordinarily proud about this, and we're now getting to launch it. And to celebrate, we're actually going to provide you with a 100% free. This is separate than the study unit we're looking at here, but we're going to give you a 100% free study unit for you to go ahead and check out and see just how awesome physiology is. The study unit is going to be on reflex arc, so you think like if you go to the doctor and they hit your knee and then it jumps, that type of thing. It's really, really cool, and I think you're just going to be blown away with the quality that we have invested in these study units. But with that said, what I'm going to do is just kind of break this down. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here. It starts at the chemical level. Now, this is not chemistry. I'm not here to this is more of like conceptual here, right? I just want you to understand, right? Like there are atoms, and atoms can form molecules, right? Molecules, so like right here, you can see we have 2 hydrogen atoms, and then we have 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen atom, right? So what that creates is going to be H2O, which we all know is going to be water, right? So what we're trying to say here is, at the chemical level, you could look at life just being made of atoms and then obviously made of molecules, right? I'm not saying anything super profound here. The question is, okay, well, how do we get to this cellular level? And I'm doing a dramatic oversimplification, almost criminal. But if you could think of it as basically that a cell is just a whole bunch of molecules put together. That's really what it is, right? You put a bunch of molecules together, then you can get a cell. Now, obviously, the type of molecule matters. How they're working together matters. But let's just stay pretty high level at this. If you put enough chemicals together, enough molecules, that is when you get something different. We're moving from the domain of pure chemistry into biology, right? And this is an amazing transition that we see here. And so the cellular level is the smallest unit of life, at least the one that everyone agrees upon, right? You'll still see debate, say, around like viruses, for example. Is a virus alive? I'm not qualified to give you that answer, but now that that question's there, why don't you go ahead and see what you can figure out for yourself. My point here is a cell, though, everyone would agree this is the at least smallest unit of life that we all agree on. And so cells, they come in all sorts of different types, right? You could have a red blood cell. You could have a white blood cell. You could have what's called a fibroblast or a fibrocyte, an adipocyte, right? We can start naming these cells. And the thing is, what creates their unique cellular type is going to be based around the molecules and the functions that those molecules have as they work together. Because what we're really getting at here is showing that it's not just like you put a bunch of molecules together. They need to work together for a common goal. And that's going to be a very important thing, right? what makes an adipose or fat cell different than a fibroblast or a type of cell that produces fibers like collagen? Well, the goals are different because the molecules are working together differently, and that is just a very fundamental aspect of this. So this is moving from the chemical towards that cellular level. Okay, well then if you get enough cells that are similar, in fact they're the same, what you're pretty much going to get is what's called a tissue. Right, so they're giving an example here called smooth muscle. Now smooth muscle tissue is type of muscle tissue. So there's actually 4 types of tissues in the human body. And so, muscle tissue is one of them. And so basically what we're saying here is you are made of 4 things. Now, though each of those things has like a bunch of different subtypes, but it's like if we look at it from a high enough perspective, high enough level, we could say that you're essentially made of 4 things. Tissues are made of cells, and those cells are all working together for a common goal. So let me give you an example. So smooth muscle, again, muscle, let's just say muscle tissue. What is muscle tissue for? It contracts. That's the purpose of muscle tissue, right? It has some kind of electrochemical stimulus and it contracts, right? There's different types of it, right? You have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is the stuff that you find like in your stomach, in your uterus, right? In your bladder. Then you also are going to have skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles, this is the voluntary stuff. It's where you go like this. Right? All that is going to be skeletal muscle. And then you also have cardiac muscle, which is going to be localized in the heart. Now, all 3 of those, though, what their job is to do is to contract, to generate movement, to generate heat, to support your posture, these types of things. But it's all through contraction. Right? All of the cells, each one of these tiny little cells here is a smooth muscle cell. And when you put enough of them together, you then now have smooth muscle tissue, right? We are all working together for a common goal. That is what a tissue is. Okay, well then what if I put various tissues together? And then I have them working towards a common set of goals. Because it's not just one goal, but a common set of goals. That is where we get an organ. Right? So you're looking right here at the stomach. Now the stomach, the muscle tissue that lines the stomach, is going to be made of smooth muscle. And so the tissue's job, the smooth muscle tissue job, that in the stomach is to contract and help to kind of like act as a mechanical blender. Like your stomach is not just sitting there with acid. It'll actually move substances around and it'll digest it in the acid and then it'll squeeze it out and it'll go down the intestine. So we can see like the esophagus, then we have the stomach, and then we have the duodenum. As it's transitioning into the duodenum of the small intestine, the stomach is going to contract. Well, more specifically, the smooth muscle tissue is going to contract. But that's not the only tissue in there. There's epithelial tissue. Right? And the epithelial tissue is going to have a different goal. Right, it's going to be on the surface of the stomach. It's going to be on the inside of the stomach. It's going to be secreting mucus. It's going to be secreting acid. And when you start like breaking these things down, you start to see that you have different tissues working together for a set of goals, right? Because the stomach's goal is not only to break down food. It's also to move the food around. There's even some absorption in the stomach. And so then you start to see that, okay, an organ is not this singular goal structure. It's going to have multiple things that it's carrying out at the same time. But what it has is tissues working together in order to achieve that set of goals. So I think you're probably starting to see how this is working, right? We have chemicals working together to actually create cells, cells working together to create tissues, and then tissues working together to create organs. And then, if you put enough organs together for a common set of goals, that is where you get an organ system. And so what you see here is the digestive system. The digestive system is beginning in your oral cavity, right? This is where your tongue and your salivary glands are. And then it's going to go to the esophagus. And you have the stomach. You have the liver. The pancreas is also going to be essential to the digestive system. And then you have the small intestine, the large intestine, or you could even say the colon, and then you have the rectum. All of those, okay, like we could look at these and be like, okay, each of these have their own different set of goals, right? Like the liver functions different than the stomach, functions different than the large intestine, functions different than the small intestine. But if we were to take a high enough view, what we could be saying is, well, what is the goal of the digestive system? its goal is to digest food. And you're like, thanks, Justin, super profound. But if you actually ask yourself, what is digestion? Digestion is breaking things down. You could do that mechanically or chemically. Okay, it's digestion. But it's also absorption. Right? The digestive system also works to house good bacteria inside of your large intestine. All of a sudden you can start putting it together and you see, okay, it's not one goal. There's a common set of goals, but they're all focused around a few things, which is basically food and water. Basically, right? Like that's what it is for. And then if you put enough organ systems, because this is just one example, right? We have a nervous system, we have a skeletal system, we have an endocrine system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system. When you start shoving all those things together, you get you eating a cookie. I'm super jealous right now. I actually really could use a cookie. That's what an organism is. An organism is a whole bunch of organ systems working together for a common set of goals. So you could ask yourself, well, what is the goal of an organism? Well, it's to live. It's to live so that you can reproduce. That's really it. That is the purpose of an organism, is more or less to just reproduce, to give your genes on, to pass your genes on, to raise those children until they can go and do the same exact thing. That's it, right? And you have to live to be able to do that. You need to be able to eat and get nutrients and poop. You need to be able to breathe. You need to be able to pump blood. You need to be able to stand up with your skeletal system. You need to move the skeletal system with your muscular system. And you're going to see how all of them fit together to create the organism. But yet, if you zoomed in on any one spot, what would happen is you would be taking this backwards trip down to the chemical level. And you can see that this is just how biology works. Now, specifically, this is an animal, right? How we describe this, like you are an animal. But I think that gives you a really strong understanding of how you are organized, right? This is the hierarchy of life. Chemicals lead to cells, lead to tissues, leads to organs, leads to organ systems, and then that is going to end with you enjoying, hopefully, what is a very good chocolate chip cookie. Again, this is part of our brand new physiology section. This is a physiology study unit. This is all about just how the body is built, right? This is the introduction to the human body. This is an amazing thing. You're going to see these study units again. This is a premium feature, but it is absolutely amazing. There's no question in my mind this is the best way to learn physiology. You can see we have our quiz mode. You can see all sorts of stuff. You can take exams. You name it. It's all part of here. And we're going to go ahead again and leave a link down in the description below to a separate but equally awesome study unit on reflex arcs. So be sure to check that out because, I mean, everybody needs to know why the doctor's hitting the knee. It's just, there's more to it than that, but at least you'll know that. But while you're down there, you should go ahead and leave us a comment and like this video. Little things like that go a really long way. But thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you learned something fun, and I'll see you next time.